Recorded, right?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Pursuant to
7:10.
Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law, GLC 30A 18, the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Community Preservation Committee will be conducted by a remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation can by members of the public and or parties with the right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at https://www.southboroughtown.com. For the meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so with in the following manner by finding the meeting at https://www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time by technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post the Southborough's website on the audio, video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Phew. With that being said, I call the meeting to order. First order of business was to approve minutes from the last meeting.
Do you want a motion?
I have one small minor change. First of all, the minutes were exceptionally well done as always. Just one change in the golf course update. The first sentence, it refers to the putting green as a putting field, but the rest of it says putting green. So it's just that one first sentence. That was it.
Thank you, Dave.
Small.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other changes? So was there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes from
Second.
January 20th
Second.
as amended.
And a second. Okay,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
You gotta do a roll call.
Yeah. So I'll call Dorianne,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
David already gave a yes, and Jennifer.
Yes.
And Andrew's a yes.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay, let's see. Is Freddie on the call? I'm trying to-
Yeah, I'm moving her right now. She just
Okay.
rejoined. I'm pretty sure this is her at least.
So Freddie, how would she unmute herself? Does she know how to do that?
She's on the phone because her
Oh, there-
computer's.
Hello, I'm
microphone's
here.
working.
Okay,
There she
I
is.
just want to make sure you were here before we got past the minutes, Freddie.
I need to log in on my computer as well because I don't have video on my phone, so I'm trying to do that as well.
Okay,
So I'll need to be let in when I do that.
Yep, I'll do that, Freddie.
yeah, there's
Thank
just a
you.
little bit of time. I'm gonna go over the overview of the process for annual town meeting. So this is for. So as we go through the approval process or recommendations that we put to town meeting to get reviewed by the town for annual town meeting. As everyone knows, we have the warrant articles that have to be finalized. At this point, I'm still told it's April 1st that we need to have everything in by. However, we'd like to get those in probably a little bit earlier so that the What typically happens when the warrant gets finalized, the selectmen weigh in and give it a recommendation, usually ask myself and the applicants to come forward and review the need for the request, the reason for the application, what the funds are going to be used for. Advisory does the same thing, usually in a separate meeting that they host, and we go through and they provide a recommendation as well. So that is what we should anticipate as we go forward. Again, at this point, I'm being told, unless anyone else has heard differently, that we're shooting for April 1st as the to get the warrant finalized, or we should have everything finalized for the warrant articles. Any questions on that? All right. So let's see, it looks like Freddie is in now also on the web, which is good, because next piece is the fiscal year 22 budget. And I was going to let Freddie go over this because she met with the town accountant last week, and I believe the beginning of this week as well, to reconcile some numbers and to come to an agreement on what we have. So Freddie, are you able to present?
Andrew, we don't have those documents in front of us. She just sent them, so can we wait a few minutes till we can at least pull them up? I'm printing them out now. I just got them, the budget. I haven't had those documents. I want to take a look at them. Can you just hold 1 second? I'm trying to print them so I can look at them.
Sure.
Okay, I have it in front of me, thanks.
Yep. Freddie, you there?
Andrew?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. I'm wondering, do I have ability to screen share?
Yes, you do.
All right, this never goes well for me, so if you want to wait for a minute, and I'm going to try to put it up. All right?
Sure.
Hope I don't have anything embarrassing up here.
Otherwise, I can
I always-
share my screen and you can just talk to it. Either way.
Why don't you do that? Because I always have kafoofos.
All right.
Yeah, you share your screen and I'll speak to it, okay?
Okay.
And can you start with the first tab?
Hold on.
Are you there?
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to. I don't know why it's not letting me.
Want me to try?
Sure. Hold on. Share.
Anyone seeing this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
so that's the wrong file, but that's good to know I did that. Now I need to resume share. Stop share. I'm going to talk while I do this. 2. The name of the file,
Name of the file is 2/19/21 fiscal year 22 CPC budget.
yeah, I don't know why I don't have it up here.
You had just sent it to us in email, so maybe it's in your inbox?
No, it's on my. You seeing it now?
Mm,
No. Show all windows, maybe that would help. That's why I didn't want, oh, there's some more. 219. All right. Is that showing you guys?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Oh, boy. That's because I have too many things open on my computer, so now you know how I work. Okay. So this you've seen before, and this just says that we have a budget which is based on the anticipated surcharge for the year, which is from the town treasurer. We have an anticipated state match, which is the 75,275. Can you see my cursor?
yes,
Okay, so this is the anticipated state match. Last year, we got additional state match, so we're taking account for that because if it's a small amount, we don't have to, but it's almost $50,000. So that gives us a new total receipt. And out of the total receipts, we put 10% aside in each of the, we call them the buckets, the reserve funds. And then the admin, that creates a total amount which we subtract from the 511, and the remainder goes into what we call a budgeted reserve. Does that make sense to everyone? Some
Yeah.
nodding heads.
yes.
All right. So that hasn't changed. This is where it's going to get a little fun. So now I'm going to the CPC account balances. So what happened here is we had 2 warrant articles from last year that didn't go to town meeting, but based on assurances made, we've been advised to include them this year, and I have done so. But it's a little bit tricky because some of the accounts are changing. So, and I also got some new information. I've been sitting with the town accountant, and I now am getting copies of files in all the years I've never seen, and we're going to sit down and go through how they account for the CPA funds different than we have been. Because we're sort of on a budgeting schedule, but they're cash. I think that's the discrepancy, but anyhow. So I'm going to go up to the top here. What we have, this is the reserve balances in historic open space and housing on this top line. That is how much was in there after town meeting last year. And the color coding is, I put the St. Mark's bell tower and the Calander Field, which were left over from last year's town meeting. And those are sort of in that orangey color. And we had 23,061.76 in the historic. We last year had said we were using that on the St. Mark's bell tower, so I'm using it again. Does that make sense?
No, why are we saying we're using it? We haven't voted it yet.
This here is an estimate of a budget for you to review.
So that's what
We-
would be taken out, Freddie? If it gets approved at town meeting, that's what gets taken out, the 23,061.76?
When you write a warrant article, you have to identify where funds are coming from.
Yep.
Last year, we identified that the $300,000 for the St. Mark's Bell Tower was coming out of two funds. So I have kept those in the exact same two because that is the warrant article that, although it's for this annual town meeting, that the selectmen have advised that we should do the same. So it doesn't make sense to try to reconfigure where we're taking the money out of, to my mind, because you already made that vote last year. You can re-vote however you want. I'm just showing you, this gives you a picture of what funds you have available. Last year, we decided to zero out the historic reserves. And this money came out of that, which would have zeroed it out in effect if it had made it to town meeting. Does that make sense, Dorianne?
Yes, I just didn't understand why it was written the way it is. I got it. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for the explanation.
Okay.
I'm not really good
So
with
then-
numbers, so.
Well, this has been the most complicated year I've ever had because there's a bunch of new stuff and this carryover. So I hope I can explain it so you'll understand. So then we have the fiscal year 22. Let me try to be in the right spot. Fiscal year 22 reserves go in. That's from all of these accounts get that 10% from the prior spreadsheet, straight across the board. So they all get that amount and it's added to the remainder from the last year. That balance, unlike town accounting, CPA accrues. You know, it doesn't use it or lose it. It stays in the account until we allocate it or, until town meeting votes it. So then you have the new available for projects. And we have a bond for the library. Maybe this would be kind of, I'm going to go over here, okay? So on this worksheet, we have fiscal year 22 bonds. The library had a little bit of interest remaining, the 13 that hadn't been accounted for last year, and we have this year's bond payment. So the new total is $84,738. It's a historic project, so I divided it up. This is me being arbitrary. You can vote differently, but this gives you a picture of what I would recommend you to do. So you have to pay the $84,738. It's a bond. We have to pay it. And I divided it up from the historic reserve, what's the balance there to zero it out, which we always have for the new members. The CPC has historically determined that they take money out of the reserve accounts if a project fits in that account first. So we zero those out every year if we have a project that fits. So the historic reserve, the balance, and then what's left, and I took it out of the fiscal year 22 budgeted reserve. Okay? This gets a little wonky, but then we have the Burnett House, and that's $82,938. My
Freddie?
recommendation is to take, yeah,
How much longer do we have left for payments on Burnett House?
we just started. I don't know. I can go to that later. We have a whole
Okay.
bond schedule.
All right.
The Burnett House is $82,938. And then the only new project we have is the Trails project, which is, I believe, $47,011. If you choose to fund these at the full amount. Then there's the townhouse, but that's going to be bonded. And when you write those warrant articles up, you can make choices tonight on that later. But typically you write that you're going to bond, and you don't have to do anything till the bond gets bonded. That makes sense. And we typically, it takes sometimes a few years, and you pay interest without paying the bond down. And once we realized that, the CPC had determined to start paying the bond like an annual payment, even if it hadn't been bonded out, to reduce it so that it would be done sooner. So you can make all those choices later, but it's not here because there's no amount that you have to pay off on that at this time if you vote to recommend that project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that would come out of historic, right? Because we're doing it.
No, it wouldn't.
historic.
It could, but only, so let me confuse you all more. The Department of Revenue requires we do reports every year, and we have to allocate every project to one of the interests of the CPA, whether it's recreation, open space, historic housing. They keep track of that. The historic bucket, we can use it on any project we want, as long as it's a historic project. A historic project that's not funded out of the historic bucket is no more historic than a historic project that is. It's just you have to put 10% aside in those buckets. Does that make sense?
And on your previous tab, you were showing us that we've basically zeroed out that historic account, right?
Right. You can
Yeah.
choose, and the committee chose to do this last year, and I had never done it in any prior year, to split it up between all the historic projects. It doesn't make it more historic by coming out of that bucket, and it just creates huge headaches whenever there's something that happens, like a project doesn't go forward in that year, or some dollar amount gets changed later. It's just easier to take the whole amount into one project if you can. It just makes a cleaner warrant article overall. But I'll go back to that in a minute, because here we have the annual town meeting holdovers. I just want to make sure no one thought we forgot about the Colander Field as well as the St. Mark's Bell Tower. All right, so those amounts, this is right from the warrant article. So this shows you that the 300,000 for the bell tower was coming out of two accounts, and I took them out of the same two accounts, and that the Colander Field came out of an account. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the balances. So are we all okay with the reserves amount? We took the 155 for the library out of the historic, and then the rest of it came out of, it's down here. You see that? 33? Okay, maybe I should have color coded those to match, but I didn't. All right, so that you have, the next thing we have is, and this gets a little different than for the members who've been here a long time, Ben and Andrew, you haven't seen me do this before, and Dorianne, I don't know if you'd recall,
I
but
don't recall.
I have
That's okay. I'm good.
I have a total amount from Carla today saying that there's a million $7,803 in our unreserved fund. Okay. But this is what's new. When we do the budgeting for next year, we're saying that's what we're going to have in, and we put all those monies in the reserve accounts up here, and then there's a budgeted unreserved we fund. That money has to come from somewhere, and we haven't received any tax surcharge on it. So what they do is they take it out of our existing general unreserved. It's a paper transfer out of the cash account we have into those other accounts to fund them. Does that make sense? And Andrew and Ben, are you there? I'm not seeing you. Can you nod your head? Now I switched pages. Does that make sense to you? It's different than we've done before, but
Yeah,
But
no,
it all
I
boils
understand.
down to, we have $1,007,803 in the unreserved bucket.
we do. But as soon as we write this budget, right? This budget here,
Mhm.
and we say we're funding all of these reserve accounts and the budgeted unreserved, which totals the 511, 551. We can't just take that into those accounts out of nowhere. So they take it out of the general unreserved. I'm still wrapping my head around this, so
Okay, they're gonna do that and take that out, but so then are we gonna, at the end of, once they settle everything, we're gonna have 1.5 million?
well, actually, the 1.07 is a total of, it's still there, it's just in the different accounts. It's a timing issue.
I understand that. I'm just trying to get a total number of that we have to allocate for projects this year if we wanted. Is it the 1.5 million, which is the 1,007,000 plus the
So,
511?
Freddie, you're saying that the way the accounting runs is that all the tax collected goes into our unreserved, then we vote on the budget, and then they move it to these historic open space and housing, right?
Yeah,
So accounting use our unreserved fund balance as a catch-all to bring money into us, and then we move it to the right allocations. So it sounds like the 1 million is our total in the account.
the 1 million. The 1 million, are we just going to call it 1 million?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. The 1 million is what we have now. But when we do our budget and we put the 10% aside, it has to come from somewhere. And we can spend money out of those buckets. So like this, I'll just explain it this way. This 51,000, right, is based on the fiscal year 22 reserves. We're putting the money in that account. It had to come from somewhere. So they take it out of the 107 and put it in here. And then we spend it. Or I'm saying the wrong term, but we allocate it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we're all good with that, Freddie. The question is, does that 1 million, if we don't spend any of the 151 and everything else, is it actually the total that we're gonna have when we budget? Is it actually 1.5?
So our all-in total.
I'm not seeing 1.5 anywhere, so I don't know what that is.
The million is our total.
It is today, but when I'm done with this little talk, we're having 219,000 left.
Right. Yeah.
If everything gets funded at town meeting, approved the way we have it here, and there's no guarantee town meeting will take our recommendations or that you're making these recommendations, we will have 219,313.76 left. Because I have to subtract, and this is what's new, is I have to subtract what we're budgeting for our budget this year out of. Some of that goes up here, these three reserves, and the rest of it is down here. Our new budgeted reserve, 332. Seeing that, Andrew?
Yeah, so you're saying with the bell tower, the Calander Field, if that gets approved, and also everything we're already doing for the Burnett House and also for the library, the funds that we have left over would be 219,000.
No, I didn't get through that. The amount we would have this here, why don't I run through it all and then you can, maybe I'll do a dollar amount here. You would have, Hope this works. The 219, right? I haven't gotten to these numbers yet, but let's see if this. It doesn't like my formula.
Say yes.
It's still not right. I don't think. Anyhow, we would have this 219 as
right.
general unreserved. All right. Can you agree to that? Just nod your head.
Number looks right.
Huh?
Okay.
Then we have, so this is where, if you didn't get that, this is even harder. Last year, we had a budgeted reserve, which stays in the account until, I have to admit, I'm going to have to run over this with Carla because I wasn't sure how to do it. We have last year's budgeted account still there until town meeting, until July 1st of this year, right? So I know I'm losing people. The budgeted reserve from last year, Carla has it at 247, 120. Last year, we said we were taking the Calander Field out of the budgeted reserve for last year. So when you subtract that, there's a 8,370 left, right? On July 1st, what's ever left in the last year's budgeted reserve rolls into, it goes up here into this account on July 1st. So that's still our money. I shouldn't say our money. That's still in the fund, but it's in this account here. But I didn't choose to use it on anything because it will just roll over and it doesn't cover anything and it would just be messy to try to break up another project into that amount. Can you understand that, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Freddie, because when we talked earlier, I was hoping that I know this is extremely complicated from the accounting aspects, but I was hoping we could just get the breakdown, like what we're gonna have for the end, for the monies we can allocate for the year, and then show what we've already got committed, whether or not they've been approved or not, and then what we have left over for the other projects, so we can start figuring out how we're gonna fund them. If it's for the trails, if it's for the historic society building, or also for the townhouse. Because the way you're explaining it now, it looks like we're only gonna have $219,000 left to do all that.
No,
So
I didn't
so
finish
somewhere,
going through.
can you just
not
tell us
following
the
us.
total amount that we're gonna have left?
After we fund everything,
After we fund things that we know we have to do, which is the Burnett House, the library that's currently underway, and the set asides for, not that it is going to get approved, but Calander Field and the bell tower.
okay,
What about trails?
Well,
and trails.
trails is something we're proposing for this go around. So then I want to get a number for what we know we have left for the next set, which would be the trails, the flag school, and then also for the townhouse.
Oh, how much is the flag school? Betsy?
That was 9,999 or something like that.
Yeah, it was just under 10.
You just call it 10 grand, be easier.
Okay. The reason I did it this way, Andrew, is because you have to choose which account you're taking it out of, and if you don't fund the accounts, you can't take it out of the accounts.
Right, but I thought we were zeroing out historic, right? which
Yeah.
then if we zero out historic right away, then all that money has to come from the general unreserved because the townhouse is historic and or general unreserved. The trails has to be, it's a recreation. We're not creating open space.
So do you see right here? Library, Burnett House Trails.
Yeah,
So I didn't add the 10 in, I'm sorry. So you have a total of, after you fund everything for this year besides the townhouse, you have a total of 3 accounts with 3 different balances that are all eventually going to end up in your unreserved to be spent on anything you want or on the townhouse. And that's a total of the 158, the 83, and the 219, which, sorry, you guys are on top of my at sum.
390.
Yeah, it's the same number. So it's 386, 659, 36.
so that's how much we'll have left if the library, Burnett, the trails gets approved. If the historical gets approved, the only thing left that we still haven't included in here is the townhouse. Is that right?
Correct. And you don't fund the townhouse this year unless you choose to.
Okay, but I just want to get an idea. Okay,
But if you're, sorry, if you're voting, you need to decide which bucket you're taking it out of. And first you need to put the money in the bucket so you know which one you're taking it out of. Does that,
again, yeah, I get that, but if we clear out all historic, the only thing left for any of those things we need to pay, it can only come from the general unreserved.
no, it can come from the general unreserved. It can come from last year's budgeted unreserved and this year's budgeted unreserved.
Okay, well, the
So
unreserved.
So I have it coming from 3 different accounts.
Okay, all right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it used to be easier when they had 1 unreserved, but now there's 3 unreserved, so. Okay. Okay. So I just want to baseline everyone so that they understand. So we have, if we approve or if we recommend the flag school at 10,000, that comes out. If the trails at $47,011, that comes out. The Burnett House, the library, everything else, and also the 2 other holdover from last year. The remaining funds that we have, and if we wanted to use them even for this next year for the townhouse, would only be $386,659. And either some of that could go to the townhouse if we chose to do that, or that's what would be left over to go to the following year. Everyone on board with that?
Got it.
Is that what we have left for this year and not funding Calander Field?
This is what we'd have this year, not funding the townhouse. The 386 or 396, 659. Everything, this assumes everything gets budgeted. I'm saying budgeted, Dorian, because
Yep.
it's just, we're recommending a town meeting. If some of these don't pass a town meeting, that money obviously wouldn't go and we get it
Okay.
back. But
So what also is different though, Andrew, is in the past, because we didn't track the budget for, we didn't take out the reserve accounts from what we were looking at in our budgets. What we had at the end of our budgeting is what we thought we were going into the next year with, right? We thought at the end of the year, what I had in all these accounts, this 386 would be what we had left next year to fund all our projects. However, conceptually, we have an additional $511,000 that's going to come in the surcharges that will hit our accounts before we go to town meeting next year, because the taxes will come in.
Freddie,
right.
can we bond the entire townhouse project or not? Can that be bonded?
Correct. You want me to go to the bonding sheet, or are you done with this?
So Freddie, you just threw a whole monkey wrench
Sorry.
into everything I just said, though. So I said, I'm trying to baseline everyone that we were gonna have $396 and 659, $396,659 for next year. And then you threw in, and this is what I was asking before, that 511, that's gonna become available next year.
So she means FY23, not FY22 becoming available.
And Andrew, we never did this before. This was a kind of still wrapping my head around it. I don't know how this is, I don't know when the money becomes available.
So for next year, though,
At some point,
when we start budgeting next year, you're saying we're gonna have almost $900,000.
What do you mean by next year, Andrew?
Next year, when we
for
go to town
annual
meeting,
town meeting.
Okay.
we will
Yeah.
have $900,000 to then budget for. Is that right, Freddie?
We should.
Mhm.
If taxes come in as we predicted, yes.
Okay, so that's a huge difference then, okay, which is fine. So we will have still, even after we pay everything this year, that if it gets, so for the townhouse, we'd still have almost, we still have the other bond that we have to pay and everything. But we'd have almost $900,000 as we go into 2023 budgeting.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you wanted to know what we had for next year, because this is just what happens after this annual town meeting, what we
Right.
have to spend now.
But I think that helps us plan for, what we have for the future. I feel a lot more comfortable knowing we have, $900,000 in the account if we're gonna, do something significant with the townhouse. Me personally. So, okay. So again, just so I'm clear and everyone's on the same page with this, based off of leftover unreserved balances from the 3 different ones and the new monies that would come in, we will have around $900,000 next year at this time that we would be budgeting for fiscal year 2023.
Yeah, I come up with 898, 210 and 36 cents.
Close enough.
I'd added the 511 back.
All right, so when we start talking about what we can spend or could afford, or what we want to budget for the townhouse, we can be thinking about that 898 in total that could be used next year, because if we do bond it, the bonding we wouldn't pay interest or anything till the next year anyway, right?
Correct, except you could choose, and we could have a
Right.
conversation, you could choose to pay off some of that and bond less.
Right, but the only amount that we could use this year to pay up front would be the you got your cursor over
86,
386.
yep.
So we have to keep that in mind for what we could use this year we could pay up to 386, which would wipe out pretty much anything, carry over or anything. And then we'd only have the 511,000 that would come in next year for us to allocate. Right? But from that 511,000, we still have all the, everything we'd have to pay out for next year's that we bonded.
I'm not understanding why
Right.
Carl has a different number to throw a wrench into this whole thing. This budget isn't making sense to me. I'm not getting this.
She doesn't have a different number. It's just different accounting for us.
Well, it
we
says
always-
right there, there's a different number. So
Oh, that there, I just have to, that's just a reminder to me, it's off a little bit. And if you know how I am, I want to make sure it's exact. It's like, I had 300. And you have to understand, she came in the middle of closing the books and getting stuff from Heidi. So I'm just going through it all. I'm going to go, match and match and match it up. So that's just a note to me. So it's not a big amount difference. And I will report back on whether it is or isn't that number. Okay?
Okay.
Sorry, maybe I should have hid that.
All right.
transparency, Freddie, transparency. Don't hide anything.
Well,
It's not hiding, it's
wouldn't know
just
if I
trying to,
didn't write
trying
it
to take out some confusion.
Well, I
yeah,
don't know. I'm very confused. I
All
don't
right.
know. I may go sit down with Carla.
I think we could also
So-
take this information and build out more of like a time series for us to understand like what's coming in, what's already like allocated or earmarked to be spent because we've already approved it versus what's available. And I think having like this like timeline view would actually be really helpful because knowing as we take on more and more projects, it's just increasing how much we have that we owe next year, right?
That's a great idea, Jen, because I think I'd understand it better than this is. Yeah, this is just too.
And I've
All
sat
right.
down with Heidi before to
Crazy.
sort this out for the Arts Council, and it's really confusing how they do it, but we could reorganize this so that we understand like what's coming in, what we already have allocated, and what's gonna be available to go out.
so I'll just say this spreadsheet here you're looking at is me simplifying what I got. All right, so if you think you have a headache, I tried to make this simpler and obviously failed miserably, but
That's why you're getting paid the big bucks, Freddie. Come on.
so to make it simple, we have three areas we budget from every year. One is our reserves, and that is the 10% goes in, and if we spend, money comes out of it. And that's all three of these up top. Then we have the general unreserved, that's like the big bank account where everything ends up that we can spend any of the interest, including recreation, which doesn't have a bucket. Then every year we have a budgeted reserve. And normally, to make it less confusing, you would never see two budgeted reserves. I would always account that one gets rolled over. But because we spent money out of it last year in the Warrant article, I felt we should do that this year. And I couldn't think of an easier way to do it than that. Maybe.
I just think that we should see the money that's in the money that we have now and what we are already committed to do. So to be the library, the Burnett House, that's it. We should see the numbers of what we are committed to coming out first. Then look at a balance. This is what we have left. This is what we're thinking about funding. And then take the field, the trails, the flag school, the bell tower, and then show if these get funded, now this is what we have left. and then look at what's coming in, add that, and then look at funding the townhouse. But this is too convoluted. This is not, and Freddie, trust me, I can't do a better job than you. I'm just looking at it from an understanding of a simpleton like me with the numbers. This is too convoluted. I can't tell what's
Okay.
what. In the beginning, we have bell tower. Well, it hasn't been approved, so we shouldn't be taking the money out there. We should see, what do we have and what are we committed? We are committed to Burnett House and the library. Okay, subtract. What's the balance? Okay, what's the possibility of being funded? That's what we need to see, so we know where we are. Because otherwise, it looks like we're guessing, and I know we're not.
So
This is very
Dorianne,
confusing to me. This is very confusing.
one of the things you have to do tonight is you have warrant articles, and you have to decide where the money comes out of. And that's what this spreadsheet shows. You have money for all of everything, the library and the Burnett House were number one. They're accounted for there. It's just, you have to decide which bucket, and I don't know an easier way of showing you which bucket when you have different buckets.
So out of the three general
Here, let's go
unreserved,
to this. You have the historical bucket, you have the general unreserved, you have last year's unreserved, and you have this year's unreserved, budgeted unreserved. So you have
So I
all
think-
those accounts.
yeah, and Freddie, for the rest of the committee too, in the past, maybe we can settle this early on and say, is everyone in agreement that we'll deplete everything from like the historic, open space, and the housing authority, even though we don't have anything for housing authority, that we would go to those buckets first, deplete that 100% before we go to the general unreserved. Is everyone still comfortable with that?
No,
I am.
no. Are you saying to deplete the housing to do these other projects?
No, we can't. I'm just saying in as a principle in the past, what we did, and that's what Freddie said, is for historic, right? Well, I'll keep it simple because historic is what we have. We will deplete historic bucket first and get it down to 0 before we go to the general unreserved for anything else.
For anything else in that bucket?
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Well, it's not even.
That clarifies it. Okay,
The
got it.
general unreserved, like the trails, doesn't have a set aside. So it has to go to the general unreserved. Historic's going to be empty. So we can't use any more historic for the townhouse, for flag school, for anything else. So everything else will come out of the general unreserved. Now, where that comes out of, because there's 3 different general unreserves, yes, for an accounting standpoint, I mean, the point is, I think we'd want to clear out the old ones, or the low hanging fruit, and just stay with the biggest one. But I don't think we need to. If you guys are okay with it, that's something Freddie and I can work out, and we can, run over like, okay, this is where we're getting it from, and you guys know we're not going to hide anything. But I mean, we've taken up an hour this evening talking about those 3 different general unreserved counts, and it's. I'm hoping we can move a little faster. So is everyone okay if we deplete the historic one, and then from the general unreserved, if you're comfortable with Freddie and I picking it out of whichever ones and making it simpler going forward, we'll do that. But I don't want to take up the rest of tonight worrying about the 3 buckets. People comfortable with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's what we've done in years past, and it's always worked. The buckets get replenished with the next receipts from the next year.
Yeah. Okay. So now, Freddie, I think what you're about to go over is the possible funding categories for the townhouse, or our bonding.
I'm
capacity?
showing, yeah, you don't need to think about that because you're going to, whatever you decide to do, you are going to have to bond unless you decide to spend the 336 or whatever that was. I'm on a new spreadsheet. I sent this to you before. This is what I think you were talking about. You'd like to see projecting forward. I did a projection forecast. This is based on and you don't need to go over this for long. It's just, we have bonds we required to pay for the Burnett House and for the library. We had some short-term interest, and that goes away. And you see, each year, this is how much we have to pay between the two for fiscal year 21 next year. Okay?
Yep.
We go to town meeting, and if we fund the townhouse at the amount they want, it would be 182,667, which would be a total of the 333,380. Now, we have a bonding capacity which is 75% of the surcharge, not the state match, and you have to leave out the money for the other buckets that aren't historical. So it's 75%. We don't need to go over why. We can do that later if you want to know. So this is the amount of our capacity. And in the first year, we'd have to come up with an additional 35,195 to either reduce the bond or be over what we should be bonding at, because we don't have quite enough bonding capacity. There's money coming in, but it's not, you'd be hitting into the surcharge or something.
Right, so even if we have $1 million sitting in the account, we can't bond more than the 75% of the church surcharge. So what this is telling us that we'd have to take some of the money out of that quote, or 898,000 to pay off some of the townhouse to get the bond down below enough what we could actually bond. Correct?
Yeah, you shouldn't even go out to bond with it. It's not like you can pay the bond off out of that amount because you're not supposed to bond more.
Right,
But
we'd have to
however
get
you
whatever
wanna
the
do it.
bonding would be to get it down to the 289 is as high as we could go. Total. The combination, it's the combination of the 150 above minus 289, right? Or 289, 185 minus the 150. 713 is what we can actually bond.
Yeah. Because I did now this is based on me doing a forecast, which, you want to run by Brian, which I did in the past. We get a surcharge and we know taxes always go up. So I didn't do it at a flat surcharge. I estimated with a 3% increase each year.
So it's approximately 147,472 that we could bond. Now, what that comes out to total amount, I don't know, but that's what our approximate bonding capacity is.
And you can go back and ask Brian to tell us how much we can do, or what you can do is find out how much he needs to bond to make that, and then spend money out of the general unreserved to reduce how much he bonds for. We've done that in the past.
Right, that's what I was trying to say.
Okay.
Out of that 898 that's carrying over, we'd have to spend down, let's say in a lump sum to pay, say we're going to pay off this to get the bond, yearly bond payment for the townhouse down to 147,472 to just be at our
And this year-
capacity, to just be at our bonding capacity. And
Correct, but
ideally, I
this
think we
year-
want it a little lower.
This year, you'd be taking it out of the $300 amount, 300,000, not the,
Oh, yeah, but, yeah,
okay. So I also sent you, and I don't have it on my computer, a bonding at 1 million and 1.5 million from if you didn't decide to fund the whole thing. Did you get that schedule?
Are you asking all of us or just me?
All of you?
Yes, I got it.
Brian sent it to me right before the meeting.
Mhm.
I sent it out. Did you not get it?
No, I
Got
got
it.
it.
Printed up everything. I don't see it.
It came in at like 6:50 tonight.
Yeah, I got it, but honestly, with such short notice, I haven't been able to look at it yet.
Yeah, I haven't even opened it. It's just, you can look at that and see how much it would reduce the bond by if you chose a different amount.
Yeah,
Right.
so like year one, for $1 million, you're talking 82,000. And for 1.5 million, it'd be 127,000. 123,000, sorry. For year one. And then they go down from there. So
So you can see it's a significantly reduced amount of annual payment for lower bond amounts, which is common sense. I think, you know, if that's what you're looking at, you might want to be deciding what you're funding and what you're not funding now.
Right, it's like a
yeah, that-
$40,000 difference between $1 million and $1.5 million in the annual bond payment.
And another thing I noticed in his bond schedule was, this is the bond schedule for the townhouse. He did the windows at 15 years and the building at 20 years. And the CPC has always determined to bond for the longest amount possible to spread the payments through the most people who are here in town for the life of the bond, because it's a long-term project if you're bonding for it. So you could choose to roll the 400 in with the 1.8 and bond it all at 20 years. You spend more in interest, but it's spread over a longer period of time and your payments would go down in the early years. And that's another one. I just saw that tonight, that it was something we could ask them to run differently. If you see that.
Is this what you're sharing now? Did this get sent out to everyone?
This you've had. This is the original bond. This is a different. I gave you this at the beginning of December.
Okay,
So this is the bond that Brian sent us at the beginning of December, 20 years for the townhouse at 1.8 million, and he separated out the windows at 400K. Right? So you can ask Brian that you want the 400 to go with a 1.8 and you want it all at 20 years, and can he give us a bonding estimate for that, so that in the, see these years here where there's no windows, there'd be some amount there. These years would go up and these years would go down.
so I would, I think, be in favor, and everyone else, please tell me what you think. Just looking at this bonding that he put for 20 years, already at the 144, that's like, and that's not even including the windows. Based off of what we already saw for our bonding, like we could just do that on year one and we couldn't go any higher. So I think if I like Freddie's recommendation, and I think it's a good one to ask Brian to take the 400,000, put it in there, but then also run us what so the total of 2.2 right, is what it would come out to that we need for a total payment. But keeping a 20-year bond under 34,000, because that's our bonding capacity on year one. You know, how much do we have to come up extra to still do the project? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Dorian, do you get that?
I do. I just don't understand why we're paying all this interest when we could pay more money to start at least the first payment, to make a larger payment to try to get these numbers down. I'm not understanding the rationale with wanting to pay all this interest.
Well, if we pay everything out and then we have no money to do any other projects going forward. Until we significantly pay, you know, into maybe 8-9 years of the bond, because 75, the only money that we're gonna have, if you go back to what Freddie was originally showing, the money that goes into the 10% set aside buckets, that's
Right.
really all we'd have going forward.
No, I was talking about the first, to put one larger payment down to start us off, not every payment, just one larger payment. So if we had, what did we say, we're gonna have 800 and something, $898,000 in that bucket.
Not
890,
till,
yep.
not till next year.
Right, well, okay. Well, this has to get approved. So it would be,
Based on the money that we have now, we can't do it based off of money that we won't have until next year, unfortunately.
okay, but if we bond it, can we put a larger payment down to bring those payments? Can we make a larger payment on it once we have extra funds in there? Like when we have extra money that we're not losing and it's just sitting in an account.
So we
collecting.
should have about like that 300 or so that's currently unallocated. So in theory, we could take out 300, a couple $100,000 to make down the initial payment on this, to bring it down. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I think we should do, because to be paying all this interest, if we have money sitting there that's not being utilized, I think that we should be making a larger payment somewhere to help bring this down. That's just my thinking. I mean, to pay interest, I just don't think it's a good idea all the way across the board. So,
Right, okay,
So,
Dorian,
and
what
again,
I was trying to do is
I'm
get
just seeing this budget tonight, 2 minutes before the meeting, Andrew. So I'm really sorry. I didn't have time to really take a look at this and get to understand this as well as I normally would, like on advisory. So I'm not. I mean, I'm looking at this and it's very. I have to take more time with this type of stuff. I need more time to understand it, and I just don't like paying interest. That's just my personal opinion. So if there's a way that we can pay it, even if we just do one big $300,000 and then go to pay 144, 140 and do that, I think that's the smarter route to go. But I'm just one member, so that's.
I'm just trying to
can I
get,
just,
hold on,
can I
Freddie.
explain what the CPC has, the Community Preservation Coalition and other groups have, what their recommendation has been and
Hold on,
why
Freddie,
you've gone
before, I just
out?
want to answer or say one comment what Dorian was saying. So Dorian, what I wanted to do is get an idea from, because looking at these numbers right now from Brian, like we can't really afford to do it because of the 300, we can't bond that much that he put out there. What I'm saying was we asked him to throw, Freddie, can you go back to that bonding page, please? We asked him to put the windows in with the total bond out for 20 years, right?
Okay.
And tell him that the bond payment cannot exceed 144,000 in year one and goes down from there.
Okay.
And that we need to know what the lump sum is as at a minimum to start off so that we could fund the whole thing at 2.2. Now,
Got
if, as long as, if we have, because I don't even know if we could, you know, if he says, oh, you got to put 500,000 up and that's going to blow everything. It was like, we can just barely do it. And we can't do anything extra. I mean, I'm completely open to having the conversation deeper if we want to put more in, but I want to know where we're going to start. to begin with and how much is gonna be out before we start talking about putting more money in. Does that make sense?
Yes, got it.
Okay. So
Thank you.
Freddie, as a takeaway, can you follow up with Brian and do that?
I can.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Freddie, you were gonna go to the
I
other
was going
page.
to explain how the CPC had operated in the past based on expert advice we had been given, which is for big projects, you want to bond as long as possible. You pay more interest, but there's two parts. Time is money, time value of money. 20 years, that money's not as much as it is today usually. And secondly, these are projects that have, 50 years or more. Well, it depends. I don't know about the townhouse, but other projects, they have more than a 20-year lifespan. And you should spread the cost across the time for people to pay into it for the benefit of that project. So, for example, somebody just moves into town today and they're going to be here for 20 years. They pay for the benefit of that project. Somebody who's here today and moves out of town isn't spending all their money on that one project. It's spreading it across time for the value of the project for the people who are here going to be paying into it that get to enjoy the benefit of that project. That's how you think about preservation restrictions and conservation restrictions, land purchases, any big ticket item that has a long life benefit, because you would not be funding this amount of money for a project that only has a value for 5 years or 8 years. So somebody who moves to town in 8 years is paying for the benefit of having a restored townhouse. That is the concept between bonding as much as possible for as long as possible. You don't have to agree with it. It's just what we had been advised in the past. It's just one perspective.
Okay. So I'm looking at the agenda. I think we kind of jumped through some of the things. We went from budget into the funding buckets, 84 Main and the library bond. I think we covered that, right? We're good with that one? Seeing heads nod.
Yes,
Okay. And then the warrant article dollar amounts and funding buckets. I mean, we talked, we did agree that we're going to deplete the historical one 100%, and then where the other funding comes out, Freddie and I can work on that. Depleting those other unreserved buckets.
Andrew, I have a question.
Yeah.
You're gonna deplete the housing. What does that mean for
No,
housing?
I said historical.
Oh,
didn't I?
I thought you said housing. Okay, so you're gonna, but we
yeah.
can't touch the other buckets, like we can't touch open space and use that money?
Nope.
Can we use the open space money for the field,
For the field?
for the
No.
colander?
Nope.
No? Okay, just trying to find money somewhere. Can somebody win a lottery?
Be nice. Me first.
I win it, I'll pay for something. I gotta play to win though. Okay, I'm sorry. Go
That's
ahead.
all right. So then the warrant articles, fiscal year 22 warrant articles, dollar amounts, funding buckets. So facilities, the townhouse, we kind of went over that a little bit, that we need more information on that. The Trails Committee, if we, we're going to deplete the historic, or the Trails Committee funding would have to come 100% from the unreserved anyhow, because they don't have any set aside. So we're good with that. And the Southborough Historic Society would have to come out of one of the unreserved as well, because the historic bucket was already depleted. Even though it's partially a historic, or it is a historic project, the funds itself would come out of the unreserved buckets. because the historic bucket was already depleted.
I have one question on that. Could that come out of our admin fees since it's a
Okay.
research study?
So the answer is possibly.
Okay, because we're not actually doing work. It's the preparation, right? Or the understanding of what's viable.
And the reason why I say possibly is, at this point, to actually put it to town meeting would then still give us the admin monies for other things that could come up. Because the way it is now with the admin money is what we're paying for dues to the coalition, our staff, and then possibly for we've done in the past is help fund some smaller items, to help out, do some things across the board to get projects ready to go to town meeting.
Gotcha. So the admin fees don't have to be approved on town meeting floor. So we have more flexibility there.
So I say that again.
So to spend the admin fees, we don't have to take that to town floor. It sounds like we have more
Correct.
flexibility there. Okay, that makes more sense. Gotcha.
So, I mean, yes, it would be possible, but it would make a huge dent in our admin funds.
Gotcha. Okay, that's fine.
Andrew, what
Yeah.
is the open space bucket used for if we can't use it on like the trails project, which is doing something with open space and just trying to make it usable, more usable? I mean, what is the actual definition of using that bucket for open space besides just buying a piece of land and letting it sit there?
So Freddie will have to keep me honest, but to create and preserve open space is part of it. To actually use, you can use funds to preserve the open space that we've spent monies, CPC monies to purchase open space
Okay.
to do that. But in this scenario, because we don't even own the land, my understanding is we could not do that.
Okay, I just wanted to understand if it was just because it's really more recreational, but I just wanted to see if there's any way we can kind of jury rig it and use the bucket.
Yeah.
No, okay. Thank you.
All right. So if there are no more questions on that, the next one was the St. Mark's Church in the Calander Field. And I think we talked about it a little bit, and depending on, I mean, if we're going to talk high level, I just want to know, do we need to go into more detail? Because I think we discussed before, the recommendation we got from town meeting was from the town was that everything that was on last year's town meeting warrant articles are supposed to carry over. And everyone's, I say everyone, my understanding is all the warrant articles that got pushed last year are automatically going to be on there. And it was highly discouraged that we do not pull anything off. So if there's going to be a big discussion, I'm going to step out and let Ben take lead on this. Okay, so we're all still good with that.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So then the next item I had for agenda item review agendas and timeline for annual town meeting. So again, I kind of talked about this earlier. Betsy and Freddie, let me know if I'm missing anything, but I think our next meeting is March 10th. For that, I'm hoping that we have the finalized numbers or much better numbers from Carla and Brian that we can talk about what we'd want to do for recommendation for the townhouse to present to town meeting and finalize that piece. Then after we get all that and we finalize what we want to say for the warrant articles, would then be, sending them to the town, getting on the selectmen's and the advisory groups agendas so they could review what the projects were. And then, obviously present at town meeting. And the applicants would be with us for that as well, with the advisory. And
Yeah, you're right. March 10th is next meeting.
great. Any questions on that? Okay. And then the next item I had was for me to review, give an update on the basketball court and the golf course. So I had, let's see, so I'll start with the basketball court. I had, I think you'd all seen the pictures of the basketball court. I had talked, I've gotten emails back from Tim saying that, you know, he's working with Karen, talked to the paving group that did it, and, you know, it's a seam and it's all fine. I've been out there and actually took my finger, and where some of those creases are, you could dig up some of the asphalt itself. And I talked even with Mark Purple at the townhouse and said, hey, you know, can you help us out here a little bit, because I know Tim kind of came in at the tail end of that whole thing, inherited it from the prior recreation department director. And so Mark was on board with helping navigate the waters between the two groups on how we get that corrected going forward. I was being told that it had to do with settling underneath the basketball court. I questioned that and am still questioning it. So that's where that is. And Mark Purple has the pictures and everything too. So that's ongoing, and they are saying that I think Tim said it as well, that it's not until the spring that they were going to finish around the edge of the basketball court. But we have not paid the paving payment for that. So any questions on that one?
Nope.
Okay, the other one, the golf course. So I did get a request from I did talk with Mark Purple about the golf course, putting the putting green in. He's going to he's reaching out to the architect. There's around a little less than $100,000, I believe, left in the account. Freddie, keep me honest on that. From when they did the golf course, that we were open to the idea of leveraging that. So I'm waiting to get a little bit more specifics on where the putting green would be and what they'd be doing. I also reached out to one Dick what's his last name, Freddie? Dick Cruciani, who is a lifelong resident of the town and also works at the golf course. I think he's worked there for a long time. He's the one that noticed that they're originally putting in they were going to move the clubhouse and have it facing the incorrect direction, and had that corrected before they moved the clubhouse. And asked him if he'd be willing to help, you know, be like an advocate or a liaison with us and the town, because the golf course committee is kind of dissolved, right? So it shouldn't just be Mark Purple, say, leading the charge with, hey, this is what it should look like. You know, my view was that if we could have Mr. Cruciani help out and say, you know, from a golfer's perspective and from the golf course perspective, this would be how it would work best, and help manage that with us, be a, you know, feet on the ground, that would be helpful. So he was very much open to that idea. So that's where we are on that one. Questions, concerns?
No.
Anything else? And the only other item on here was to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to adjourn has been made and
Andrew?
seconded. Discussion.
Ready has something.
Ready?
Freddie, did you have something?
I had a question.
Yeah,
For the next agenda, you're going to review the townhouse budget and bonding and decide how much you're voting on it.
correct.
Okay. And we will have draft warrant articles written for the committee to look at next March 10th. Is
Correct.
that your expectation?
Yes.
And I will work with you on the budget buckets, and then they will vote on that, because that does have to be voted
Yeah, yeah. I
when they
mean,
vote on the warrant articles. Okay.
correct.
I just want to be sure.
Yeah, and even as long as we get the budget down or the dollar amounts that we want to do and know that we have them, and you and I could tweak the warrant article afterwards about what specific buckets. I think that's the way we've done it in the past. You know, and I think this was great to get that detailed level out to everyone. So you can see the pain we go through to do this. But at the same time, I want you to know that I don't
Ever want to do that again?
Well, no, not that. I mean, for those, and Freddie and I used to do this before, and if I suppose it's time I asked the group. It used to be that Freddie and I would kind of meet and do the finances ahead of time and say, okay, this is high level. This is the amount of money we have to play with, or I shouldn't say play, to allocate for the year, and what can be done. Do you really care where it comes out? Do you want to go through all this pain again with us, or do you just want to know, here's the dollar amount, and yeah, we're going to split it up this way and say, okay, we can make that happen, and then we just do the buckets for the accounting piece on the back end. You know, it's great to still do that once in a while so everyone knows how painful it is. But for an efficiency of the meeting, you know, I think it's better to just talk high level and say, all right, let us do the buckets from the general and reserve on the side, knowing that we can't take anything from any inappropriate bucket, you know, but that's up to you guys. So
That's fine with me.
Fine with me.
We don't need
I
to feel
agree.
your pain.
No,
okay.
we got a taste of
Freddie-
it.
Yeah, so Freddie, I think, so next week, if we can have the draft warrant articles, at least the high level pieces, let's not get hung up on the buckets that they're gonna come out of. We can finalize those after the meeting. But we need to get the high level warrant article written, and then we have to vote on the dollar amounts, and then we can make those dollar amounts work out of the buckets. But Freddie, you and I are
So-
gonna have to make sure that we are
Yep.
presenting the dollar amounts that are completely gonna be available to do it. So we don't get stuck, be like, oh, we set up we gotta have to have a flash meeting to change the dollar amount or something.
May I make a recommendation? If we're writing the warrant articles, you
Yeah.
have to identify the buckets in the warrant articles. I just presented where all the money can come out of, and you will have money left over. If we write the warrant articles with the money coming out of that, you just vote on the warrant articles. You don't have to go through this again. The law requires you vote on which bucket. So that's one. And two, you have to vote on the warrant articles. So if we just write the warrant articles with the buckets in them as required, it's one vote, and you don't have to get tangled up. You have it in front of you in that spreadsheet, which bucket they're coming from.
All right, so Freddie, you and I'll meet, and we're gonna make it as simple as possible for everyone to vote
It'll
on.
be one, yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
You won't have to come back and vote a second time. It's one vote.
right. And I think that's what everyone is nodding that they want to see.
Yes.
And then
Agreed.
maybe just like, could we get it a couple days ahead of time so we can actually review it before we come and meet? I think it'll help us also.
Yep.
Yep.
I'll give it to you.
The 10th is
I
a
don't know the date.
Thursday, is that
I
right?
would appreciate that.
I'll have it to you by Monday, hopefully by Friday.
All right.
Okay.
That would be great.
So any other discussion? So there's a motion to adjourn. Dorian,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
and Andrew is a yes. That's great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time, patience, and Freddie,
Bye.
appreciate all your hard work on this.
All the
I know it's-
detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.